So Blake, I think a while back you still have an accounting client, correct?
I have one client, family friend, that will never leave me, which is good because it keeps me fresh.
Okay. And I think you were telling me that like you were sending bill payments out and the vendor was getting the check, cashing it. The vendor was happy, they were paid, but then the money never cleared the bank account on your client side?
It was driving me crazy. I'm trying to reconcile this account. We're making payments with Melio or Melio. I can never say it right.
Melio, yeah.
Melio. We're making payments with Melio. And the vendor got paid. I confirmed with the vendor that they got paid, but I'm not seeing any transactions in the bank account to match, right? So like the vendor invoice is still showing, well, the vendor invoice is paid, but it's not clearing the bank. Like it's not clearing in my register. It's not reconciling. There's no matching bank transaction. And I cannot figure this out for the life of me. Like how could the vendor get paid and we didn't get a debit on our bank account?
Yeah.
So my solution was eventually I just forced through the reconciliation. I'm like, well, my client's happy. Like I'm not going to waste time digging into this. I guess I don't know what happened. Did Melio just pay this bill and never charge my client for it?
And I've had other accounts bookkeepers tell me similar stories, right? When they're using like these fintech apps and banks, check was sent in cash, never hit the bank. Vendor got paid, money was withdrawn, it never made it to the vendor. I voided a check, but it was still cashed or processed.
Yeah. I'm thinking, how is this? This is crazy. Are they just paying bills for free?
Yeah. I mean, even this week, I got a notification from Melio about a refund check for $10 that is on its way that I created during a demo in 2021. It's just like you said, it's very confusing. And a lot of accountants have had these. And unfortunately, I feel like the apps that you've gone to and you try to get support for these strangenesses, they don't have answers, really causing frustration for you and your clients. Like nobody has answers. But I think finally I have a story that can help us all understand what's been happening under the covers.
I must know. Tell me.
So do you recognize any of these names? Evolve Bank and Trust, Relay, Mercury, Row, right? These are, a real bank, Evolve Bank and Trust, and they have apps like Relay, Mercury, Row.
Evolve Bank and Trust and a Thread Bank. Those are the ones that I know that are being used a lot for these fintechs. And they're the actual banks with the charters.
Exactly.
And then you have the companies like Relay, Mercury, Brex, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of them. That are Crescent, that are all apps that look like banks, that layer on top of the banks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And so maybe we'll make it easier. You and I want to create a bank for Earmark. Let's create a checking account in the Earmark app. So the Earmark users could use the Earmark checking account. Right?
This sounds like a great Ponzi scheme. Let's keep on working on this.
It's not a scheme. But to do this, we're going to have to go find a bank to partner with.
Right. We could do this. We could actually do this ourselves if we wanted to. Yeah.
Build out our own API calls to the bank, start taking deposits, cashing checks, paying bills. We could do this, but it might take us months, if not years, to build all this, get the relationships, the legal contracts, all that set up. Or we could just use this company called Synapse and their APIs. We don't have to have a relationship with the bank. We just start coding the features in our app, and maybe we launch this in weeks using a middleman. Right?
Okay, so would you say that like Synapse is like a Zapier for this kind of banking functionality?
You can think about it that way. You're going to if let's say you're one of these apps like if we try
we're Earmark Financial.
We're going to talk to Synapse, and Synapse they have the relationship with the banks. So
they've built
one of
the
our
API.
Listeners, yes, and it's many banks. So one of our listeners could deposit $1,000 into their Earmark checking account.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But who knows what bank that money's really going into? It could be in multiple banks. And when they pay the bill, it could come out in another bank. See how it's very kind of intermingled?
I got it. Synapse is like, I get it.
Yeah. So it's very intermingled. And so, but it makes sense because simplicity is going to win, right? If you're an app developer, you want the fastest path to market and you want to build customer solutions and apps faster. Right? But on the backside, Synapse and the banks, things were a mess and got really messy. And to the point now where Synapse is now in bankruptcy.
Oh, no.
And it's so messy that basically they have $85 million unaccounted for in customer funds. that are across lots of neobanks, because there's neobanks for consumers, there's investment ones, there's lots of neobanks were using Synapse.
So
they
how did they? Okay, well, you got to tell me how they lost $85 million in funds.
Well, definitely getting into that.
And who's this impacting? Like are customers, end users not? Do they not have their money?
Well, so do you remember even West, because we use Relay, last fall we had to migrate to a new Relay. Remember, all our bank account numbers changed because they moved off of Synapse, and now they have their own partner bank. Mercury announced they have their own partner bank. Row has their own partner bank. Evolve Bank and Trust stopped working with Synapse, right? So a lot of things have happened, right, to where they're not using Synapse anymore. But here's the kind of the crazy thing that was learned from this bankruptcy filing. So the trustee, she is Jelena McWilliams. She used to be the former FDIC chair from June 2018 to February 2022, but now she's part of like a legal consulting firm. So she's the trustee.
Okay.
She stated because they have zero funds, they cannot even hire a forensic accountant to follow the trail of this money.
So Synapse went bankrupt. They have no money. Nobody knows where the $85 million went. This is customer funds that Synapse was supposed to be holding as a custodian.
Well, if they have that, but the problem is the partner banks, the app, Synapse's ledgers, they don't match up. Nobody's ledgers match each other.
So the money might be there, but nobody knows whose money is what. It's all mixed up.
It's all mixed up.
Oh my God.
And then basically this has led to now, like currently, people who have lost access to funds, about 200,000 customers are completely locked, right? Last fall is when things really started to break. And at that time, Evolve just withheld a $16 million payment to Synapse. And that started like this big domino. And they claimed it was because Synapse was in breach of contract and that they were terminating the relationship.
Wow.
I was able to find an article from October 2023 in Fintech Business Weekly that has lots of screenshots of spreadsheets, emails, and a lot of information about discrepancies. Obviously, these two companies are a lot of finger pointing on both sides, but they have, for example, a list of spreadsheet photo of checks from Relay, Row, Mercury, checks that were voided but were still paid, right?
So that's how my checks for my client got paid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And my client never paid for it.
Yeah, and both sides for about 5 years, 4 years, 5 years, knew things were off, and they were off by $100 million daily. They just nothing ever reconciled out.
Right. Well, it got out of control, right? Like once a clearing, basically this is a clearing account, right?
Yeah.
So once this clearing account stopped tying out, there's just so much going through it.
Yeah, everybody's blaming each other, whose records are correct, not reconciled whatsoever. And
my God.
And then if you think about this, though, remember Silicon Valley Bank crashed in March?
Yeah.
And all the rails for that. So in 2023, the rails for running transactions around was a little bit of a roller coaster, kind of a mess, right?
So you mentioned that a lot of these banks now, these neobanks, have moved off of Synapse.
Correct.
Are they using some other middleman, or are they now just working directly with banks?
I think I can speak safely for Relay, Mercury, and Row. Like these are small business banks. I was able to research that. They all look like they have direct relationships with the banks now.
Got it.
So they have a legal contract with the bank, and they're working with the bank's APIs directly.
So there's no middleman that could do bad bookkeeping, basically, and mess this all up.
Yeah. And this was
that's good.
The middleman apps, right? They called this banking as a service.
Right.
Right. And this might not have to exist in the future because now the banks
have built those
catering
APIs
to developers better.
Yeah.
Right? And then the only other follow-up news, I guess, Synapse was going to be acquired by TabaPay, but TabaPay backed out in May from the deal. So this is this money may never be accounted for or moved to the right place. It's
gone.
One of those, maybe you just burn it all. It's bankruptcy, right? You just burn it down.
Well, it sucks for the end users who had no idea probably that Synapse was even in the mix.
Yeah.
And now because of this flaw in the tech stack, they're out a bunch of funds.
Yeah. And it's even like these neobanks for consumers like Dave. There's all these other neobanks for consumers. They've been using this technology.
Is this like FDIC insured, or are these customers just out because it didn't happen with the actual bank they bank with? It happened with some like middleman partner. I mean, who's really impacted by this, David?
Well, I'm sure we have listeners with clients that have been. You were impacted by this mess of these
But
transactions
not in a
that don't make any
negative way,
sense.
right?
Not huge.
We had a
right?
gain,
Yeah,
right?
you had a gain.
Our
But
vendor got paid and we didn't pay.
but there's lots of stories of like people, over time where the vendors weren't getting paid.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, I sent this payment, they never got it, or it got delivered to the wrong place. And then I'm starting to think maybe this isn't hacking or data entry errors on the end users, right? This is flat
Yeah.
out, it was just a mess.